But for more on this, we're joined by political analyst and former Asia chairman of Republicans Abroad, Ross Feingold, who's in Taipei. Good to speak to you. So Trump said they wanted the sanctions lifted in their entire, and we couldn't do that. This shouldn't really be a surprise to Trump, should it?
Well, President Trump now has close to 2 years monitoring this issue, and obviously it's almost a year since the Singapore summit. So he's become quite familiar with the intricacies of decommissioning nuclear weapons and inspecting nuclear and missile research sites. And he's emphasized that this would be a long process. So the fact that today's summit did not reach the agreement or sign the agreement that may have been hoped really shouldn't surprise us. So President Trump, as he indicated in the press conference, he was not going to sign a deal that reached the security goals of the United States.
So, Ross, are we really expecting any significant achievement from these summits, or is it all just a show?
Well, the good outcome of today, if we could call it a good outcome, is that whether it's Kim or Trump or Secretary of State Pompeo, they've indicated that talks will continue. And as long as the governments are continuing to talk, that's a positive. According to President Trump, Kim has also said that he will continue not to test nuclear weapons or missiles. So that's a positive, not just for the United States, but obviously for neighboring countries such as South Korea and Japan as well. So they should look at that as a positive. There is a risk, though, that countries like China and Russia might start to raise in the international community for some sanctions relief, which is obviously a step, at least based on what we know from today's post-summit press conference. It's a step that the United States doesn't support at this time. So that's definitely something to watch out for. And also whether or not countries on the border, such as China or Russia, if they cannot get sanctions relief via agreement with other countries, whether they will unilaterally allow a greater amount of trade to occur, even if it does violate international sanctions, these governments might look the other way. So there's definitely some risks involved without having a more stringent or more progress type of agreement in place.
And why do you think Trump made it personal and talk about his strong character? I mean, we can't forget the time he called him the Rocket Man.
Well, we see this with President Trump and his interactions with foreign leaders all over the world. Sometimes there is criticism, whether it's by Twitter, which is President Trump's favorite mode of communication, or in press conferences, or at even multilateral events. We've seen President Trump criticize some of the other attendees. However, we've also seen President Trump very quickly pivot to saying good things about these other leaders. And I think it's fair to say that in one-on-one interactions, that President Trump does get along well with other leaders, and that might very well include Chairman Kim of North Korea. So we shouldn't necessarily criticize President Trump for that. I think, again, the important thing is whether or not agreements are reached, which are good for the United States, and in this case, other stakeholders like South Korea and Japan, and to some extent China and Russia as well.
Well, we have to wrap it up here. Good to have you with us, Ross Feingold.